Though many disagree, I do still love me a good found footage horror movie. And while it is a subgenre that can be done quick and cheap sometimes, when a little elbow grease and noodle juice are put to work, great horror can be made. Today's entry in the Best in Horror Countdown 2023 to 2024 looks at horror through a shaky first-person POV lens. The Hell House LLC series has been strong almost all the way through. While the first trilogy seemed to get a little caught up in its own lore, the newest entry goes back to basics and just makes it scary, scary, scary again. At number 11, Hell House LLC Origins, The Carmichael Manor, was released on October 30th, 2023, and is streaming on Shudder from Terror Films. It's directed and written by Stephen Cognetti. Delving into the past leading up to the horrors that happened in the Hell House trilogy, Hell House LLC Origins, The Carmichael Manor, looks into the life and home of one of the people who built the Abaddon Hotel, the site where the first 3 films took place. When a trio of cold case investigators, Margot, played by Bridget Rose Parada, her girlfriend Rebecca, played by Destiny Leilani Brown, and her brother Chase, played by James Liddell, go missing after visiting the expansive Carmichael estate, their footage taken for their documentary series is found months later and dissected by another documentary crew. The first Hell House LLC was a wonderful little found footager that was able to recreate some of the sights, sounds, and scares one might experience making one's way through a haunted house attraction. Not only did it use the found footage template well, but it also was able to set up some great set pieces, developing thick suspense and delivering some strong shockaroo payoffs. Hell House LLC 2, The Abaddon Hotel, perfected the model and delivered some great original sequences itself that added to the lore. Unfortunately, the third Hell House LLC, Lake of Fire, felt somewhat repetitive and rushed, and too steeped in its own backstory for its own good. While I liked parts of it, I felt the series had run its course and that it could go out relatively strong without overstaying its welcome with a trilogy. But it's been a few years, and it seems filmmaker Stephen Cognetti had enough time to inject some new life into the series, as I found this newest Hell House LLC, subtitled Origins, The Carmichael Manor, to be quite an invigorating little spook show. Let's be honest, the scariest part of the Hell House LLC series are those creepy-ass clown mannequins. And while the Hell House LLC trilogy answered a lot of questions, it really didn't delve into what those freaking things were and what the story was behind them. Now, I don't know if that needed a whole movie to explain it, but that's basically what this 4th installment is all about. While we do find out about another haunted location, the Carmichael Manor, and the unsolved murder of the Carmichael family, it basically takes what worked in the original trilogy and places it in a new locale. But honestly, the best part of these films are the various setups where Cognetti places one character alone and hearing/seeing things, resulting in a gigantic jump scare, and damn it if he doesn't pull this off multiple times again in Hell House LLC Origins, The Carmichael Manor. It's not the most sophisticated of scares, but Cognetti makes it work over and over and over again in this movie. What makes it so successful is that he gets decent actors to place into peril, and the leads, Parada, Brown, and Liddell, are just that. This isn't Shakespeare, but they are able to convey the feelings anyone would experience when they're alone in a house and hear something spooky and are forced to check it out. Now, this one has the leads making a supernatural podcast, so they want something to happen, which is a bit of a switch from the haunted attraction motivation of the first 3 movies. But the palpable fear is communicated by these actors all the same. Using long corridors, twisting halls, half-opened doors, winding stairwells, and a foreboding woods surrounding the manor, you know, all the usual shit that is used in a haunted house scenario, Cognetti is really able to get some solid scares from these actors, and thus, it scared the shit out of me too. Turns out these clowns are scary, and while the backstory isn't the deepest, it fits into the lore decently. Now, I would have tossed those mannequins into a bonfire at first sight, but because they aren't supposed to change anything in the historic home, our leads just can't do that. And while I think showing the clowns move might have been a tiny step too far, it does make for some absolutely chilling moments. Hell House LLC Origins isn't perfect. There's a lot of backstory this one treads through, and there were times when I think the lore was just too complicated for its own good. By the time Part 3 came out, the backstory had become too impenetrable, with a lot of it left to the viewer to remember rather than the movie refreshing some necessary info. While it might have been clear to the filmmakers, the casual viewer would have seen numerous other films since the last Hell House movie. This fourth installment does a better job of catching people up, so it's not necessary to see the other films, but it does add to the experience. Still, even I, who have seen all of the films numerous times, had some trouble trying to piece how everything fit together, including the new info Origins provides. That said, this is a wing-dang doodle of a haunted house found footage movie. It contains numerous white-knuckle scenes that actually pay off. While it does utilize music, and I hate that, I guess since the film is presented in a documentary-style format, it's more feasible that the keyboard lead-ins were added in post. Still, I prefer my found footage music-free, and Origins breaks that rule. Nevertheless, I was caught up in Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor, and from the looks of things, this installment paves the way for more to come. I'm all for it, if Cognetti can capture the levels of tension and terror he achieves in this latest one. Another found footage franchise, VHS, has had a long history of solid scares from up-and-coming names in the horror biz. I just reviewed the newest VHS, subtitled Beyond, and just last year, another one came out that was quite noteworthy. VHS 85 was released on October 5th, 2024, and is streaming on Shudder. It's directed by David Bruckner, Scott Derrickson, Nastasha Kermani, Mike P. Nelson, and Gigi Saul Guerrero. It's written by C. Robert Cargill, Zoe Cooper, Scott Derrickson, Evan Dixon, Mike P. Nelson, and Gigi Saul Guerrero. The VHS series has been a lot of fun through the years, offering up some truly twisted and whacked-out stories from some of horror's biggest and brightest filmmakers, and this year's edition, focusing on the year 1985, is no exception. Looking at the lineup, I was very excited to see VHS 85, as it has some filmmakers I've had my eye on for some time, and I was happy they get the chance to go nuts with the format. Many of the filmmakers were alive and renting VHS tapes during this time, or at least heard about that time. And with so much of that era seen as the golden age of horror, I was hoping for the best VHS yet. Turns out there's a lot to like in VHS 85, and of course, like all anthologies, there are some good ones, some great ones, and some not so good ones. Since many of the segments kind of fold up into each other, as it all seems to be recorded on the same videotape over a monster truck rally, it's a bit harder to distinguish one segment from the next. But nevertheless, here's a rundown of what you'll get if you check out VHS 85. Interspersed throughout the film are segments of a hard copy style show called Total Copy, directed by Hellraiser, The Ritual, and the Night House director David Bruckner. Bruckner also did the popular Amateur Night segment of the original VHS, and here he uses the VHS style format well, as the grainy footage shows a being that is under observation at a scientific facility. The creature looks like a boy, but he's not of this earth, and Bruckner uses this investigative TV format well, building some solid tension that reminded me a lot of films like Australia's The Ugly and even the original Halloween. It's not the best segment, but it is the creepiest of the bunch. We then take a trip to a lake with a group of kids, out to party like they often do in these types of films, in No Wake by Mike P. Nelson, who was responsible for the recent Wrong Turn remake. This segment is split into two parts and pulls off some clever stuff when it comes to writing. This film does a wonderful job of sewing the segments together, having parts of one segment popping up in the middle of another and then going back to the first segment. I wasn't a huge fan of what Nelson did with Wrong Turn, but I'm really impressed with his spin on camping horror in VHS 85. His tale is unpredictable, kinetic, and fun all the way through. But I think my favorite of the bunch was God of Death by Gigi Saul Guerrero, who did one of the segments in Satanic Hispanics that I felt was kind of out of place in that anthology. But God of Death fits right into the mania of VHS. This segment takes place during a horrific disaster when an earthquake devastated parts of Mexico, delving into Mexican mythology and following a rescue team who happens to rescue a news cameraman. This segment was unpredictable and moved at a pace that reminded me a lot of the first two Wreck movies. There's a lot of gore, nudity, farting, and violence to enjoy in this one. TKNOGD, pronounced Technogod, was another one that surprised me. This segment was filmed in an art-housey format in front of an audience and reminded me of an old Grace Jones concert I once saw when I was way too young to be watching it. It deals with some cyberpunk themes that were popular at the time, and while some of it is tongue-in-cheek, things get bonkers by the end. I like this segment from Nastasha Kermani, who directed 2020's Lucky. Finally, everything wraps up with a segment by the filmmaking team of Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, who did Doctor Strange and the Black Phone. I really liked what the pair was trying to do here, but I think their segment, entitled Dream Kill, felt like it was a bit overthought and a little clunky. There were a lot of shocking developments and a shit ton of gore as the pair of detectives investigate a videotape that seems to show a murder scene that hasn't occurred yet. But thinking about how all of it worked together kind of made my mind itch. It's heady horror that delivers some scares and chills, but this segment worked the least for me. Still, there have been some stinkeroos in this VHS series, and none of the segments in VHS 85 are that. The film utilizes the 1985 gimmick without being too cheesy with it, while never forgetting to pepper shocking and gory moments all the way through. This latest anthology is the strongest the VHS series has been in a while. Once again and always, feel free to agree, disagree, or how about you play along at home and give me your own picks for your favorite horror movies. It's October, so let's talk horror. Come back tomorrow for the next level in the Best in Horror Countdown. Be sure to hit all of those pertinent bells and whistles down below, and you'll never miss a post. Happy Halloween, folks. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're